You wake up with pizza boxes piled up on top of each other. You stretch your right arm and slide it across some wet spilled noodles you had last night. Your leg smears some chocolate cake from last week and stains your mattress. There are random papers, clothes, books, food cartons with food still inside them, and other random useless junk all over your queen-size bed. You're too lazy to get out of bed, but you have to get to work. You shove aside all the junk and slide it onto the already littered ground. There are plastic bottles, more fast food litter, clothes, dirty dishes, and animal fur on the ground. It's sticky and covers every inch of real estate to the point that you feel like you're walking on lava. You stare out the dirty window, look at yourself in the mirror, and sulk. This isn't the you you'd thought you'd be a year ago. The sun is shining and you just bought your brand new house. It's a nice place outside the city in a little friendly neighborhood surrounded by picket fences and blooming flowers. Your neighbors come up to greet you just as you pull in the driveway. They bring a casserole and some yummy desserts to welcome you to the neighborhood. You gleefully accept them and head inside your new pad. Throughout the week, you unpack your bags and arrange your furniture. You also just landed a new job which helped you afford this house. You wake up every day at 6 a.m. and come back home at 10 p.m. This new job is paying you well, but you don't have time for yourself or to keep your house in order. Over the next few months, you start ordering food every night and bringing leftovers to work. You haven't changed your bedsheet since you arrived and haven't vacuumed the floor since you first stepped foot inside. The smell inside is getting stronger, considering you're not taking out the trash or opening the windows to air out the house. You've also given up on sorting out your dirty laundry. You have no more clean clothes left, so you're reusing the same clothes for work, but they have food stains all over them. The bathrooms are not a place anyone would like to go. The running water drips and overflows onto the floor, making it damp inside. Since no sunlight enters, mold grows abundantly, providing a home for various bacteria and parasites. It's no wonder you call in sick every month. So much work has made you lose sight of your house and has affected your performance at work. You've gotten multiple warnings and have been told to take care of yourself and get new clothes or wash the ones you have. But the more clothes you buy, the more dirty stacks of clothes appear all over your house. There's no place to sleep anymore. Your bed is a mountain of junk, and your couch is home to boxes you haven't even unpacked since you moved in. You order a sleeping bag and crash in the dirty kitchen. Cockroaches are crawling on every inch of the kitchen floor, counter, and little crawl spaces. Rats have chewed on most of the wooden furniture and created a network of underground tunnels for them to access every area of your house. You hear the little rat tails clacking on the tiles whenever they run past your ear. You try to sleep, but the dishes in the sink are so stacked up that the dripping faucet channels water to run through the plates and glasses and splash on your forehead. You pick up your sleeping bag and place it in the basement. The smell is unbearable. There is moss growing in every corner and even a small puddle of stagnant water festering and providing a home for mosquitoes, bacteria, and other vermin. The rats and mice use this small pool as a swimming ground to have pool parties and clean themselves up after a long day of eating your food and creating tunnels. There are thousands of rats in every corner, but you somehow don't mind them anymore. You see little nests of baby rats in the dark corners. The wooden foundation is failing and being eaten away by termites and the buildup of mold. You wake the next day with rat footprints all over your body and go to work only to be kicked out and sent back home to clean yourself up. You try to shower, but the pipes are clogged and only a few drops of dirty water land on your body. You go to the backyard that has a dirt-filled patch where you were supposed to build a swimming pool, but didn't have time to follow up on it. You lay your sleeping bag on the dirt and try to find a garden hose to clean yourself. But rats have gnawed through the plastic, so it can't spray properly. Either way, you rinse yourself with water and try to dry yourself with some garbage bags, since you can't find your towels in the sea of trash. You go back inside to watch TV, which surprisingly still works. You clear some space on your couch and order pizza. You have a stack of pizza boxes stacked on top of each other, forming a makeshift coffee table, and you rest your legs on it. The pressure and weight of your legs allows some insects to scurry away that have been eating the leftover crusts and cheese. The doorbell rings and you get up and answer it. The delivery guy is already in his car driving away from the stench. They all know you by now. It's a good thing you paid online. You go back to watching the movie while seeing some more critters crawling all over your TV set. Hours pass, and you realize that you need to wake up early for work. You make some room to sleep, but scratch your head on some sharp object lying around the couch. Months pass. The neighbors stop talking to you, and even straight up ignore you. They avoid you every time you leave your house. Mostly, they gossip and comment on your house. All the pests that came from your house are spreading throughout the neighborhood. Pest control cars are driving in and out of the neighborhood, visiting a new house every day. Flies and maggots have settled your house to the point that it's impossible to walk around and not have some flies circling your face. Anyone who drives by the neighborhood knows that your house is the source of the infestation. Many more months pass, and your house is unrecognizable. It's impossible to see the floor, and the walls have scratches all over them. Rats have taken over and nibbled on just about everything. They've become your new friends when eating and even finish some leftovers for you. The basement is completely flooded, and the water is leaking out to the main road. Other creatures have sought shelter in your home, including stray cats and dogs, raccoons, possums, and even bats. You have broken glass all over the floor from the busted light bulbs, and your mattress has holes all over it. You wake up with pizza boxes stacked all over you, and then look at the mirror. It's your 1-year anniversary of moving in, and this isn't the life you imagined. Out the window, you see your neighbors selling their homes, with some already gone, including the one who welcomed you when you first moved in. You turn around and, as if for the first time, you finally see that your house is such a mess. You spot a picture of yourself hanging on the wall. You put it there when you first moved in. You decide to fix your house and clean it all up. You know it'll take weeks or months, but you skip work and begin by cleaning up your room. You get boxes of garbage bags and start stuffing trash inside. You buy 3 new vacuum cleaners and start collecting all the dust and debris that has collected over the past year. After a couple of hours, you have over 20 garbage bags outside your house waiting to be collected. The stains will need to be scrubbed away, and the destroyed furniture will need to be thrown out. After 2 months of hard work, you manage to get rid of all the trash you can find. It takes you another week to scrub the floors and walls and order new furniture to replace the broken, chewed-up ones. The biggest challenge is getting rid of the remaining pests and fixing the basement water problem. After making some phone calls, you get some pros to fix the water and get rid of the vermin. It takes you a total of 4 months to turn your place into a minty fresh pad to live in. Your garden is blooming, and you go back to work in fresh clothes with a wide smile. And you get to meet your new neighbors, who have heard all about you. Yep, you have some fences to mend, don't you?
And now for some breaking news. All snakes have suddenly disappeared.
If you saw this on the news, what do you think would happen? Well, Voldemort certainly wouldn't be pleased to hear this, and neither would other Slytherin members. Hogwarts would have 3 houses instead of 4. Parseltongue, which is the language of serpents, would become useless. Okay, Potterheads, let's get back to our Muggle world. How would it affect us? Well, let's look at the bright side first. People with ophidiophobia, which is the fear of snakes, would be so relieved. We can all agree that snakes aren't exactly everyone's favorite animal. Some snakes are venomous, and this doesn't help save their reputation. It's often overlooked that these animals usually prefer to retreat when you encounter them. They can become defensive if threatened, but when left alone, they don't want to mess with you. Try telling this to people with a phobia, though. Now they can enjoy outdoor activities, such as mountain climbing, like everyone else. And yet, they would have other worries in the absence of these serpents. The design of the ecosystem works like a clock. Every species has an important role. If one goes down, the others will be affected. Snakes are no exception to this order. They primarily snack on mice or rats. They help to control rodent and other small mammal populations. This is important in terms of preventing the spread of diseases, too. Think about the spread of the plague of medieval times. Driving out all reptiles could cause a similar problem. Did you know that the bubonic plague was never completely gone? It's been spotted in modern times too. For instance, in Madagascar in 2008. So it's good to have some snakes around to protect us from disease outbreaks. You see, snakes are excellent hunters. They ambush their prey by using their highly developed senses to find and track their potential dinner. They're super mobile, can squeeze through cracks, climb on rock walls, and swim. They can even fly. Well, sort of. Flying snakes can't actually gain altitude, but they can glide. They use the speed of free fall and contortions of their bodies to follow airflows and lift themselves. Yeah, they can catch their prey in numerous ways. If we imagine a world without them, it will lead us to another phobia. Allow me to introduce you to mussophobia. It's the fear of mice and rats. People with this phobia will have a hard time with all those rats wandering around, since there are no snakes to eat them. Not to mention that a single pair of rats can have 1 million descendants in over a year. Say hello to crop damage. An overpopulation of rodents can lead to a shortage of food and competition for resources. Do I feel the Hunger Games vibes? Oh, and mice wouldn't be our only problem. You can add insects to the list too. Again, without snakes, they'll throw a party in the streets. Reptiles also play an important role in the natural environment and food webs as prey. Mongooses, eagles, and hawks would really miss snakes. Eventually, some populations of large mammals would decline, and this could lead to the extinction of some species. Then there's medicine. Scientists and researchers would miss these creatures. Snake venom is the key to the development of certain medicines. For example, some diabetes and heart disease medicines have been derived from snake venom. Patients who need them will get affected too. When we mention snakes and medicine, there's something else that comes to mind. Botox. Is it really snake venom? Nope. Snake venom used in skincare isn't obtained from the animal itself. It turns out that this ingredient is called snake. It's a human-made ingredient designed to mimic the effects of temple viper snake venom. Now let's picture what life would really look like without snakes. I'm starting with day 1. People don't immediately notice the absence of these creatures. So, in the first few days, especially in cities, people would have no clue that all snakes are gone. Workers in zoos could start to panic. You would see some news about snakes missing from zoos. Then people in zoo administrations would go through CCTV footage. they would be shocked to see that snakes disappeared into thin air. After the spread of this news, authorities would probably open special departments to see if they have any snakes left in their country. Then it would turn into a worldwide issue. Some sort of a global alliance would be established to investigate what happened to these reptiles and what could be done about it. By the time authorities and people understood the severity of the situation, ecosystems would already start to change. People who live in urban environments may not be directly affected in the first few months. Then they would see more mice in their houses and in the streets. Around 500,000 mice live in the network of tunnels of the London Underground, for example. The number may vary, but many rodents live in large cities. These animals would become more visible. You'd open a kitchen cabinet and, oops, you'd see a mouse looking at you from behind a jar of peanut butter. New career opportunities would arise, since the demand to live in a mouse-free environment would skyrocket. Authorities might introduce new taxes to raise money to handle this new situation. After all, they would need to provide people with safe places to live. Of course, it would be not only urban places that would be affected by the absence of snakes. The countryside would have even more problems. Without snakes, the number of pests would increase. These animals would start destroying crops and habitats of other animals, and farmers would be in serious trouble. Authorities would need to support people living there and find ways to protect the environment, which would be their top priority. Researchers and scientists would have to take a huge responsibility. Maybe they'd create artificial snakes that could be nutritious like real snakes, so that animals like eagles would hunt them and continue to live. What artificial snakes would look like is a mystery. I can't imagine them. I'll just leave it to you. If we flashed forward to 5 years from the first day of the world without snakes, we would face an entirely different world. Maybe we would have a special day for it, the 5th anniversary of the world without snakes. The changes would be obvious, but by that time, people would have probably got used to living in that different world. Some restaurants would have already made changes to their menus. Goodbye to snake soup. Then there would be new museums dedicated to snakes. You'd be able to read about the story of their evolution and see their fossils. Maybe you'd stop by the museum souvenir shop to buy a snake-shaped pen for your friend. Lastly, we would still be looking for alternatives to snake venom in the field of medicine. I mean, it's a relief for people who show allergic reactions to snake bites, but these animals are crucial for some studies and medicines. So, researchers would still be busy trying to find alternatives that could replace snake venom. If we went 200 years ahead in time, we would see a world where people have fully accepted that snakes are gone for good. So much so that younger people would only know that there was an animal named a snake that once lived on this planet. They would get to know this animal from history books and videos. Coloring books would have a cat or a dog, but not a snake. Mythical creatures like Medusa and Shamaran would become even more mystical and interesting. Oh, and we wouldn't compare a sneaky person to a snake anymore. There would be a new definition for them. We've survived the Ice Age, meteorites, and many other challenges, so we'll probably figure something out. Fingers crossed that this scenario never gets real, though. Do you have any other version of how events could unfold in a snakeless world?
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side. Some strange seismic activity begins all over the world. Volcanoes on the planet are waking up, but instead of lava, fiery stones, and black ash, they release an invisible gas that slowly fills the atmosphere. This gas is safe for all mammals and insects, but for some reason, it harms people. Gas masks, medication, nothing helps. It's like Earth says, "Hey people, I've had enough. Get out of here." To survive, humanity decides to move to a place where the gas can't reach. underwater. We begin global migration to the seas and oceans. The first thing we need to do is build underwater cities. Engineers use anti-corrosive metals and building materials that are not destroyed by moisture, so there are no problems with the construction. But there are too many people on the planet, which means we need to move further and further from the shore, and the deeper the bottom, the stronger the pressure. To build an ordinary underwater house, it's necessary to create equipment capable of withstanding the water column. Also, it requires expensive materials. Stainless steel is not enough. There should be strong alloys of metals to resist colossal pressure. All of this takes a lot of time, and while some are building cities moving deeper foot by foot, others are crowding in coastal parts. Ponds and lakes are becoming the best places to live. First, it's much easier to swim in fresh water. People spend much less energy and time on movements there. Secondly, fresh water doesn't require powerful filtration used in seas and oceans. And thirdly, there are fewer people in ponds and lakes, which makes the water cleaner. Therefore, all the rich people live there, and the poor survive in the oceans. Famous auto brands create stylish submarines and closed boats with filtration systems. Scientists, together with engineers, come up with a technology that quickly extracts oxygen from water. One box with this technology constantly fills every house with fresh air. And another special box sucks all the carbon dioxide out of the room and releases it into the water. Clothing brands create stylish diving suits. The ocean is cold, so designers install a heating system inside clothing. People used to collect sneakers, but now they wear fashionable fins. There are thousands of fin designs with various engravings and patterns. People create underwater mills to generate electricity and build underwater vacuum pipes inside which high-speed trains drive. But the most remarkable thing is aquatic farms, where livestock eats grass and seeds. There are also incubators with plants that produce extra oxygen. The human body is also changing. The skin becomes smoother and the muscles get stronger. Life in the ocean is a continuous overcoming of water resistance. And you also need to carry an oxygen tank with you. So every day is like a good training in a gym. Take a look at the Olympic swimming champions. Now, most people have such a figure. Doctors, biologists, and engineers unite to create unique masks that allow people to breathe in the water like fish without oxygen tanks. People get much less sunlight underwater and lose vitamin D. This causes depression and weakens the immune system. To fix this problem, scientists build huge ultraviolet lamps that illuminate the entire seabed. People are getting used to a new life. In a sense, it's not much different from the previous one. Everyone also goes to cafes, cinemas, shopping, and the gym. People get an education, work, and use the same law system. Only now, instead of walking down the streets, they swim. Water resources are rich in oil, minerals, and other valuable things. This ensures the growth of the economy. Megacities have appeared in the deep waters of the oceans, and seas and lakes are becoming resorts. The conditions on the surface have become completely unsuitable for humans, and the next generations don't even know what it is like to live on land. Meanwhile, tracks of people on the surface disappear. Abandoned houses are overgrown with moss and vines. Animals fill cities. Seismic activity causes earthquakes that carry all buildings underground. Humanity made room for a new species, fish. Several 100 million years ago, the ocean was inhabited by giant monsters. The smaller fish couldn't fight these big guys, so they swam as close to the shore as possible. Then, over the years of evolution, they began to change. Fish grew limbs and learned to crawl on the ground. And so, after a couple 100 million years, they began to turn into mammals. And after that, people appeared. At least that's what the theory of evolution says. Approximately the same story happened with modern fish. Only instead of sea monsters, they faced people in the ocean. Bright light, oxygen consumption, emissions of harmful gases, and garbage forced the fish to migrate first into the depths of the oceans. And then, as humans began to master the depths, the fish swam to the surface. But not because there wasn't enough space in the ocean, but because people started catching too much fish. It's problematic to grow grains, fruits, and vegetables underwater, even in closed farms. Therefore, to replenish the food supply, people just started fishing. To survive, the marine inhabitants had to swim to the surface. Now fish grow limbs to crawl. But when the dangers of people are left behind, the fish face a new problem: mammals. The population of bears, tigers, wolves, and all animals has increased since people left the surface. Now the predators are the rulers of the continents. The hardest struggle for survival begins. Fish learn to disguise themselves to hide from enemies. Many grow venomous spines, while others gain the ability to strike hard with their fins. But octopuses evolve the least. These clever creatures are the first to grab sticks and stones to fend off bears. They learn to dig holes in the ground and pluck fruit from trees, and soon they become heads of the Sea Kingdom. Meanwhile, people are building powerful spaceships to find another planet to inhabit. There's too little space in the ocean, and the water is too dirty. Ventilation systems are pumping too much oxygen out of the ocean, releasing a lot of carbon dioxide. Seaweed and phytoplankton, which provide more than half of the world's oxygen reserves, are disappearing because of human activity. People understand they have to leave Earth. Gradual migration begins. Humanity has been evacuated from the planet on giant ships for several centuries. They're flying to an exoplanet, just a couple hundred light-years from Earth. Octopuses are becoming more intelligent than mammals. They see millions of giant ships flying out of the ocean and rising to the sky. The picture seems familiar to them. There's a memory of similar events somewhere in the depths of their DNA. The brain of octopuses develops faster thanks to the gas coming from the volcanoes. They become full-fledged masters of Earth. Animals and fish live next to them as pets. Then the octopuses build houses, invent the wheel, and open fire. From this moment, a new history of the planet begins, the era of octopuses. They create their civilization and find traces of the old one. Archaeologists with tentacles suggest that strange creatures lived on Earth once upon a time. They had 4 limbs and could walk upright. These creatures built their civilization here, but something happened, and these guys just disappeared. And while the octopuses are trying to figure out what happened to the previous civilization, people surf the expanses of space and meet a new, highly intelligent life. These humanoids look like octopuses since they have long tentacles, large eyes, and a developed brain. They tell people that once upon a time, they lived on planet Earth, but then plants and trees began to emit something called oxygen that poisoned the air. At first, the octopuses hid in the ocean, but oxygen filled the water, so they decided to leave the planet. Some of them adapted to the new conditions and stayed in the water with the fish. People tell them what happened next, including the history of humankind. The space octopuses realize that the story has now looped. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Have you ever wondered why all planets are perfectly round? And what if these celestial bodies decided to break the rules and change their shape? Would we end up with square planets, triangular moons, or maybe even intergalactic shapes we can't even imagine? Well, let's find out. So how do planets form in the first place? The universe is filled with swirling clouds of dust and gas. These clouds, called molecular clouds, consist of various elements and compounds such as hydrogen, helium, carbon, oxygen, and so on. They're like a cosmic kitchen filled with the ingredients needed to cook up some brand new planets. The first step in the recipe for planetary formation is called the accretion theory. Let's say that something happens that causes gravitational instability. Like a supernova goes off nearby or something. This pushes the gas and dust in the cloud and causes them to come together. Because of gravity, these particles start falling toward a central point. They become more tightly packed together, like when you squeeze a ball in your hand. And eventually, they're squeezed so hard that the cloud starts to flatten into a disc shape. Kind of like when you mix flour and water to make pizza dough. This disk is called a protoplanetary disk. It's also spinning because the cloud's particles had some rotation to begin with. Now, imagine these tiny dust particles and gas molecules dancing around in the disk. Sometimes they bump into each other, and when they do, they stick together like Velcro. These little clumps of dust and gas are called planetesimals. They're the building blocks of planets. And as the planetesimals continued to collide and merge, they grew larger and larger, forming protoplanets. The protoplanets were getting serious about their size, and their gravity became stronger. Some of them got so massive that they became the grand masters of their cosmic neighborhoods, the planets we know and love. Each planet had its own unique recipe of gases, rocks, and sometimes even water. But why do the planets look like spheres? Well, it's all because of gravity. Let's go back to our protoplanets. Imagine you're squeezing a balloon with your hands. The air inside of the balloon pushes back, creating pressure. Something similar happens with planets. Gravity squeezes its material inward, pulling in towards the center. And since gravity acts equally in all directions, it pulls material from all sides toward the center of mass, resulting in a sphere-like shape. And that material pushes back with pressure, resisting the force of gravity. In the end, they both find a sweet spot where they balance each other out. It's called hydrostatic equilibrium, a fancy term that means everything inside a planet is in balance. But that's not all. Another thing that makes the planet spherical is their rotation. Think about a ball of Play-Doh or something like that. Imagine you spin it rapidly. The material starts to push outward, making the Play-Doh bulge at the equator and flatten at the poles. The same thing happens to planets. As they spin on their axes, the combination of gravity and rotation pushes the material outward, making the planet bulge at the equator. They low-key want to become disks again. However, gravity doesn't want any lumpy planets. It wants them to be nice and round, so it keeps pulling on the material, trying to make everything as compact as possible. Eventually, gravity wins, and the planet settles into a spherical shape. Let's take some examples from our planetary playlist. Jupiter, the giant of the solar system, loves to show off its oblateness. It spins so fast that it becomes noticeably squished at the poles and chubby in the middle. It's like a spinning top with a cute belly. Saturn, the ringed wonder, also joins the oblate party. It spins around with its beautiful rings, and its oblateness is even more pronounced than Jupiter's. These examples show how rotation can give planets a unique shape. They go from being perfectly round to having a delightful bulge around the middle. It's like cosmic pottery, where the spinning motion creates a playful and distinct shape. So now you know why the planets are round. But what's more interesting is, what if they weren't? What if they were, let's say, cubical? Or even triangular? Well, let's see. A cube-shaped or a triangle-shaped planet would have its mass spread out in a completely different way than a sphere. And you know what that means? Gravity would be all shook up too. On a spherical planet, gravity pulls everything towards the center because the mass is evenly distributed around that center. But when we introduce a cube-shaped or triangle-shaped planet, things get interesting. If you're standing at the center of one of those faces, you'd feel the strongest pull of gravity. That's because the faces are the closest to the center of gravity. And as you venture away from the center and start walking towards the edges, gravity starts playing tricks on you. You would feel the struggle against the steep-angled gravity. Walking on those edges would feel just like climbing a mountain, or walking on a super steep slope. All because gravity wants you right in the middle of the face, and nowhere else. Now imagine the terrain along the edges and corners. It's a barren, rocky, and dry landscape. Why? Well, all the water would pool in at the center of each face, leaving the edges high and dry. And the air quality? Well, it's either non-existent or so thin that it can't support life. Not the coziest place to set up camp, that's for sure. And don't forget your warm clothes, lunch, and hiking boots. You'll need them because of the crazy climate. The type of climate you'll encounter on our cube or triangle-shaped Earth depends on how it spins. If it rotates at its corners, each side would enjoy a mild, temperate climate. However, if it rotates on an axis through two of its faces, things get intense. Picture a roller coaster version of our current climate. Some faces would be polar wonderlands, icy and chilly. The top and bottom faces for the cube, and the bottom face for the triangle. Meanwhile, the other sides would be completely different. In a cube, they would be scorching hot with an equatorial climate that would make you break a sweat. Instead of sunlight gently curving along the surface, it would directly beam onto these faces. Talk about feeling the heat. And on a triangular planet, the sunlight would strike the faces at an angle. This angled sunlight would create fascinating temperature variations across the planet. Imagine this. As you move from the base of the triangle towards the tip, the temperatures would gradually decrease. The base, where the sunlight hits most directly, would be the hottest region, just like the equatorial climate we're familiar with on our spherical Earth. But as you venture towards the tip, the angle of sunlight would be less direct, leading to cooler temperatures. But the base is still super cold and dark, since the sunlight doesn't directly reach it. So the triangle would be absolutely crazy in terms of temperature changes and climate zones. By the way, you know that cozy blanket of air we call the atmosphere? Well, on our angular Earth, things would get a little topsy-turvy. Gravity would be pulling stronger from the center of each face. The result? The atmosphere would go through some crazy changes. Picture this. At the center of each face, where gravity is strongest, the atmosphere would gather and thicken. It would be like a bustling city, full of air molecules. But as you venture towards the edges, things would start to thin out. The atmosphere would become scarce and very thin. So breathing along the edges would be quite a challenge, and the edges would be a tough neighborhood for life to thrive. Moreover, a thinner atmosphere means less protection from the sun's radiation and solar winds, so corners and edges would be extremely dangerous for humans. Of course, this is all just a playful exploration of what could be. Our Earth loves its spherical shape, and that's a good thing. But there's no harm in imagining wild and wonderful possibilities, so keep your imagination soaring and continue to marvel at the marvels of our amazing planet, however it may be shaped.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Imagine a planet where every breath you take electrifies your body like a shot of espresso. The sky above you is an intense shade of blue, while colossal trees stretch towards the heavens, their vibrant green leaves growing at an astonishing rate. Daily exercise becomes a thrill like no other. With the abundance of oxygen, you become a supercharged version of yourself. Running feels effortless as you dart across the landscape, lifting weights that would normally seem impossible. It's as if the world itself is infused with a surge of energy. Everything is moving faster. The wildlife surrounding you is equally affected by this oxygen overload. Animals roam the land in majestic proportions. Their massive frames are propelled by speed and agility. Picture yourself in a pulse-pounding chase with an oxygen-charged cheetah, racing against a predator that could put a Ferrari to shame. Now you may wonder how such a wild scenario could ever be possible. Well, let's see. Oxygen is the powerful fuel that keeps life going. It makes up about 21% of the air we breathe, and every breath we take delivers these tiny molecules to our cells, giving them the energy they need to thrive. Without oxygen, our cells would struggle, and our bodies would fall apart. But that's not all. Oxygen is a superstar that works for all kinds of living things, from tiny bacteria to giant elephants. It's even important underwater, where it enriches the oceans. Amazing creatures like plankton and algae produce lots of oxygen, creating a thriving underwater world. But to fully understand the impact of high oxygen levels on the planet, prepare for a journey back in time. Recently, scientists have made an astonishing discovery. They tested rocks from two different places that were really far apart. And can you believe it? These rocks held tiny pockets of gas that showed how oxygen levels shot up by almost a third in a very short time. It was like a breath of fresh air. So they studied these rocks and found that oxygen levels back then were much higher. Imagine lush landscapes, towering forests, and gigantic swamps that stretched as far as you could see. During the Carboniferous period, oxygen ruled the atmosphere at an impressive 20%, just like today. But over the next 50 million years, its levels shot up to a crazy 35%. Can you imagine what that did? As oxygen surged, something incredible happened. Huge forests grew all over the land, creating a breathtaking green world. And massive swamps took over low-lying areas, making the landscape look surreal and otherworldly. At the same time, carbon dioxide levels dropped. Normally, when things break down, microbes release carbon dioxide into the air. This gas acts like a warm blanket, trapping the sun's heat and raising temperatures. But in the mysterious swamps where these giant plants were buried, the microbes couldn't do their job. The result? The planet got really cold. Who would have thought that a breath of fresh air could have such power? The scientists are still trying to figure out why this happened. But one thing is certain, it wasn't just happening in one place. It was a worldwide phenomenon. It was like the planet was playing a funny game with the climate. But let's go even earlier. We see the first North American dinosaurs making their grand entrance. High oxygen levels are what gave a big boost to the rise of mighty dinosaurs in North America and beyond. Picture tropics filled with the magnificent giant creatures. Obviously, dinosaurs didn't just appear out of nowhere. They took advantage of a changing environment that was perfect for their evolution. Oxygen levels played a huge part in this dinosaur party. As oxygen levels rose, so did the size of these incredible creatures. They started small with predators like Chindosaurus, and soon after, huge dinosaurs like sauropods took over the land. Then, 65 million years ago, dinosaurs disappeared and mammals took over. And here's the interesting part. Mammals never grew as big as dinosaurs. So what's the explanation for this? Mammals, and humans are mammals too, by the way, are special because we can regulate our body temperature. But that comes at a cost. We need a lot of energy to stay warm compared to reptiles and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs didn't bother with temperature control, so they could focus on growing big. The biggest dinosaurs were 10 times larger than the largest mammals. It's like a game of anything you can do, I can do 10 times bigger. Dinosaurs might have had similar limitations with their sizes, but those were much less strict. Before the dinosaurs' extinction, mammals were very small. Many mammal species disappeared along with the dinosaurs. But survivors took advantage of the open ecosystem and rapidly diversified into various body sizes. However, after 42 million years of growth, mammals reached a size plateau. This happened on all continents, most likely because of the temperature and land area. Colder environments allowed mammals to grow larger. Balancing body size and heat became challenging. Land area also played a role in sustaining big populations. But making animals bigger isn't the only thing high oxygen can do. This humble gas is a true jack of all trades. It also acts as our loyal bodyguard, protecting us from harmful UV rays and other dangers from space. Without oxygen, we would be defenseless against space threats. Oxygen also has a fascinating role in shaping the weather. It teams up with its other atmospheric buddies to make the sky go wild with tornadoes, hurricanes, and thunderstorms. They mix and mingle in the air, creating just the right conditions for these exciting weather adventures to happen. And these adventures can be dangerous, but they serve an important purpose. They help distribute nutrients and organic matter, carrying soil, leaves, and debris to new places. So what if we decided to mess with nature and crank up the oxygen levels to crazy heights, 30%, 40%, or even 50%? Well, too much of a good thing can become dangerous. Oxygen toxicity is when too much of this gas causes big problems. It's like eating loads of candy. It's fun at first, but soon enough you'll regret it. Surprisingly, an overdose of oxygen can leave you struggling for breath, like a tired dancer in desperate need of a break. At first you might feel a burst of energy, but it doesn't last. Dizziness sets in, as if you've been spinning on the dance floor for hours without stopping. In extreme cases, too much oxygen can even harm your body, making you feel like you've crashed into a huge truck. So while oxygen is always with us, giving us life, it's important to appreciate its delicate balance. Don't put on your special breathing gear. Also, we wouldn't be the only creatures to suffer from this oxygen extravaganza. Mammals, for example, will struggle to adapt to these extreme levels. The balance of power among species will change drastically, and winners and losers will fight for survival in a world that's spinning out of control. And we'll need stronger shelters to deal with these gigantic animals. We'll have to stay nimble and avoid danger. Amidst all the chaos, there will be astonishing adaptations. Birds will fly higher than ever before, reaching heights that would amaze even the clouds. Also, get ready for more natural disasters and delicate ecosystems hanging in the balance. Fires will start quickly and rage fiercely, making wildfires a constant threat. Even a small spark from a campfire could cause disaster. we'll need to rethink our cooking and heating methods to stay safe in this oxygen-filled world. But let's not forget the other side of the oxygen story. If we had a planet with low oxygen, only around 15%, we would face a completely different struggle. Every breath would be difficult, leaving us tired and struggling for air. Physical activity would become extremely hard, and our memory and focus would suffer. So let's be grateful for the oxygen levels we have now. They're the perfect balance for us to thrive. In this exhilarating journey through an oxygen-rich world, we've experienced breathtaking wonders and discovered the delicate balance of our planet. Let's cherish the magic in every breath, respect the interplay of oxygen and life, and embrace the thrill of this remarkable ride called life.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Picture this. It's a lovely Sunday morning, and you rise from your bed, do some stretching, and open your window to a gorgeous day with clear skies. But hold up, something's odd here. The usually jam-packed street is completely deserted. Where did everyone go? You take a closer look, and to your surprise, you realize that you're the only soul on this planet. What's your next move? Let's get real here. The answer to that question is simple. You can do anything and everything that your heart desires. The world is your playground, and you can create your own adventure. Want to drive a sports car at lightning speed on the freeway? Go ahead, because there's no traffic to hold you back. Feel like playing a round of golf from the top of a skyscraper? Why not? Who cares if you end up breaking a window or two with your golf ball? Have you always dreamed of living in a massive mansion? Guess what? Now you can. You have a world of possibilities in front of you, and nothing can stop you from experiencing them all. Okay, so you've had your fill of all the excitement and thrill, and you're now starting to ponder on the question of what's next. Maybe it's time to get down to business and figure out the reason behind the world's sudden emptiness. Could there be anyone else out there? What if you're not the only one left? You might start searching the city, and even venture beyond its limits. But the world is a big place, and you might not come across another living soul. That thought alone can be a bit terrifying, right? So let's move on to more important matters, such as how you're going to survive in this desolate wasteland that's now your kingdom. It's time to face reality and plan out your next steps to ensure that you can make it through this situation, no matter what. The first thing on your to-do list is finding food and clean water. Of course, you'll have a good supply of both for some time, but perishable items such as fruits and vegetables won't last forever, so it's best to consume them first before they go bad. After all, there's nobody operating the power stations that power the refrigeration units in grocery stores, so they will inevitably shut down. Speaking of which, you also need to consider your water source. In the initial stages, try to scavenge every single bottle of water you can find from the nearby stores and bring them back to your sanctuary. But, unfortunately, you'll eventually run out of bottled water, and you'll have to come up with a way to filter your water supply. This will be a vital task to ensure your survival in the long run. Think of laying your hands on a portable water filter like this one. With that, you will be able to take water from any source, be it a river or even a hole you dug up yourself, and drink it in no time after it's been cleansed in this bottle. So, you've indulged in all the perishable food items you had stocked up on for days, weeks, or maybe even months. Now it's time to start thinking about the future and your long-term food supplies. Since there's no electricity to keep your fridge and freezer running, you're going to have to rely on non-perishable food items such as rice, beans, and canned goods. These will be your trusty companions in your quest for survival. However, as time passes, you'll need to think about sustainable food sources, and that's where farming skills come into play. You should start learning how to grow your own food before your stocks run out completely. Let's talk about medical supplies. They're a crucial aspect of surviving in a world where there's no one to turn to for medical assistance. Your best bet is to raid as many pharmacies as you can find and stock up on future supplies to prepare for any potential emergencies. It's essential to be extra careful too, since there won't be any doctors around to help you out if you sustain serious injuries. When you're the last human on Earth, you're going to need to learn a whole bunch of survival skills if you want to keep on keeping on. I'm talking hunting, first aid, cooking, and plenty more. It's not just about farming and filtering water, although those are important too. Right now you're probably relying on a bunch of other people, without even realizing it. But in this new world, you're gonna have to fend for yourself. The good news is that you've got all the time in the world to learn new things and expand your knowledge. Remember those libraries and bookstores you used to walk past without a second glance? Now they're your ticket to becoming the ultimate survival expert. And yeah, you won't have the internet to help you out, but you'll learn to do things the old-fashioned way. You might also want to have some survival gear with you at all times. You may get in all sorts of trouble with nobody to help you but yourself. So having a hiking toolbox like this one could be a lifesaver. It has everything you need to find your way and stay warm and safe even in the wild, not to mention the city. As much as you may enjoy the solitude, you're gonna need some sort of companionship eventually. Sure, you could get yourself a pet or two, or even build your own personal zoo if you're feeling ambitious. But be careful. You don't want to get eaten by a pack of wolves or lions, do you? Maybe just stick with a dog or a cat, or perhaps a bird that can mimic your voice so you can pretend you're having a conversation. Either way, you're gonna need some sort of connection with another living being, so start thinking about your options. So, you've got this whole world to yourself, right? And you can live in any mansion, palace, or hotel you want. Sounds great, doesn't it? But let's be real here. Living in luxury all the time can get old fast. Plus, these buildings will start to crumble and fall apart if there's nobody to take care of them. Maybe run away from the city altogether then. You can go anywhere. The world is your oyster. But before you start packing your bags, remember that you need to find a way to get there. The problem is that all the cars and trucks will be useless because their fuel will go bad after a few years. So, you might want to choose a place to settle down for good. And in my opinion, it's probably a good idea to avoid places with extreme weather conditions. I mean, dealing with a hurricane, blizzard, or tornado all by yourself doesn't sound like a walk in the park. Don't forget about the clothes. Yeah, I know, you can totally raid all the stores and try on all the funky outfits or dress like a celebrity for a while. But let's get real. You're gonna need clothes that will actually help you survive. So make sure you have something for every season, and keep plenty of warm clothes and blankets around. An emergency blanket may come in handy as well. Stock up on these just in case. It doesn't take much space and can save your life. Even if you move to a place where it's hot all the time, it can still get chilly at night, so you gotta be prepared. Hey, I know talking about being the only human left on Earth can be a total bummer. So let's switch to the brighter side of things. With nobody around, you can find all kinds of ways to entertain yourself. Sure, survival skills are important, but you can also learn new hobbies and get creative. Imagine learning to draw, make sculptures, or write your own book. You could be the next Stephen King, except without any competition. What would you call your masterpiece? The Lone Survivor? The Ultimate Survival Guide? The possibilities are endless. Just don't forget to keep talking to yourself or your pet parrot so you don't forget how to use your own voice.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
You know the old sayings. To appreciate life just a tad bit more, you sometimes need to walk a mile in a stranger's shoes. But the people surrounding you have roughly the same likes and struggles, right? What if you could experience human life as it was thousands of years ago, or even a couple hundred years? Why not? Trust me, you'll be amazed at the differences. And the similarities for that matter. Let's start with a time before smartphones, before fast food chains, and before even electricity was a thing. I'm talking about the Stone Age. During these times, our early ancestors were all about living in caves, simple huts, or teepees. They didn't do much apart from hunting and gathering for their food. If you'd lived back then, you might have used basic stone and bone tools. You would have needed those things to hunt all sorts of wild animals, from birds to woolly mammoths. Hey, you'd even cook your meals using controlled fire. Yeah, steaks go way back. But people back then weren't all muscle and no brains. These ancient humans were also the first to leave behind art. They used all sorts of funky materials like minerals and charcoal mixed into water, or tree saps to make their engravings. They even carved little figurines from stones, clay, or bones. Now, during those days, humankind also experienced the last ice age. which was a real bummer for a lot of the big mammals that our ancestors used to hunt. Obviously, things started to change. Humans began using smaller, more polished stone tools like spears and arrows. They even started to live near rivers and other bodies of water in nomadic camps. Think glamping, but without the fancy photo filters we use today. Later on, ancient humans switched from hunting and gathering to agriculture and food production. They started domesticating animals and cultivating cereal grains. They used all sorts of fancy new tools like polished hand axes and even began to settle down in the plains. Don't even get me started on the advancements they made in home construction and art. They were weaving, sewing, and making pottery like it was nobody's business. Our next stop in history, ancient Greece. Want to hear about what your home might have looked like back then? Turns out, ancient Greek houses were built around a courtyard or garden. It doesn't sound much different than what we're used to these days, right? But the walls were made of wood and mud bricks. No fancy concrete or steel for them. As for the windows, they were small and without glass. But hey, they had wooden shutters to keep out the hot sun. You probably wouldn't have had much furniture inside, but if you were lucky enough to be on the wealthy side, you might have decorated your walls and floors with colorful tiles and paintings. Unfortunately, when nature called, many homes didn't have a bathroom, so people had to rely on small vessels or even wash in streams they had nearby. I mean, imagine how awkward that must have been. Only the wealthy had the luxury of taking baths at home. At night, ancient Greeks slept on beds stuffed with wool, feathers, or even dry grass. And with no electricity, the only lights came from flickering oil lamps and candles. Wanna talk fashion? Turns out many people walked around barefoot. Some wore leather sandals, or for horse riding, high boots. When it got hot, some rocked wide-brimmed hats to shade their faces from the sun. One thing they definitely did right was jewelry. They sported everything from bracelets to earrings and even necklaces. Now, when it came to eating, men and women usually ate separately, and the rich always ate at home. The less privileged folks would eat in public. But get this, everyone ate with their fingers, so food was cut up in the kitchen first. Fancy being a knight in the Middle Ages next? Back in the day, those fancy pants knights were all about that manor life. But let me tell you, they didn't even own the land proper. Nope, they were granted rights to the income from a manor or other lands by an overlord. And as time went on, these lands were passed down from generation to generation, like a family heirloom. Oh, and forget about dividing that land up between all the heirs. Most lands went straight to the eldest son. Sorry, other siblings. And don't even get me started on the hierarchy. Society was extremely divided back then. Heads of state and the highest-ranking nobility were on top, controlling large pieces of land. Lesser nobles had authority over smaller areas of land and fewer people, and at the bottom of the noble club list were the other knights, who didn't even own land and had to serve other nobles. Not fun, right? However, your daily life might not have been that bad. You might have enjoyed some leisure activities too, like playing games, cue the chess matches, and listening to music of the troubadours. These musicians were incredible songwriters, skilled poets, as well as singers and instrumentalists. Let's proceed with the Renaissance. It was a time of change, excitement, and luxury. People were finally able to enjoy some of the finer things in life, like better clothes and nicer tasting foods. And boy oh boy did they love the arts. The streets were also filled with craftsmen, artisans, and merchants who had some money to spend. But don't get me wrong, life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for everyone. The farmers and peasants still had to work hard all day long. Their homes were little more than one-room huts, while the wealthy merchants got to live in giant mansions. Sure, those mansions might have been dark and cold and pretty smelly, but at least they had space. Now, let's get to the good stuff. Fashion. Clothing was a big deal during the Renaissance. The rich would dress up in all sorts of fancy clothing, from tight coats for men to long dresses for women. Entertainment was all the rage during the Renaissance. If you lived back then, you would surely have loved going to festivals, sporting events, and playing games like chess, checkers, and backgammon. But the biggest event of all was Carnival. You would dress up in crazy costumes and had big parties. And of course, there was shopping. You would head to the marketplace in town where the local merchants and craftsmen would sell their goods. Money wasn't as regulated as it is today, and each city had its own currency with constantly changing values. Now, if you were lucky enough to go to school during the Renaissance, you were probably wealthy. It was the nobles that mostly learned about grammar and arithmetic, but some studied philosophy, Latin, and public speaking too. There's probably no other time in history more impactful on human life than the Industrial Revolution. What did it really mean, though? Well, picture this. Before this time period, people used to make things with their hands, in their own homes or small workshops. But then, someone had a brilliant idea to build big factories and use machines powered by engines to make products in large quantities. The first country to try this new way of doing things was England. But soon, the whole world caught on. The Industrial Revolution started in the cloth industry, where making fabric used to be a slow process. But with inventions like the flying shuttle, things got a lot easier. With all these new machines and factories, people needed a way to get raw materials in and finished products out. That's where transportation came in. The steamboat appeared in 1807. Then, someone came up with the brilliant idea to put a steam engine on top of wheels. And then on top of rails. Ta-da! The railroad was born in 1825. As you can imagine, all these things had a big impact on where people lived and how they worked. You might have needed to leave the countryside and move into bigger towns and cities to find work. But the cities were often dirty and crowded. And while the machines made work easier in some ways, factory work created a lot of problems for the workers. You might not have earned much, and the work was often dangerous.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side. Now get a load of this. A red whirlwind sweeps along the coast of Australia and heads toward the nearest city. This tornado is unique, not by its color, but by what is hidden inside it. These are great white sharks, hammerhead sharks, tiger sharks, and bull sharks. Shark! They fly inside the hurricane, snapping their jaws and trying to grab a piece of meat. People who look at this bizarre phenomenon from the outside think that they've got something in their drinks. But this is reality. A shark tornado can really exist? Or not? Yeah, let's find out. In 1877, a rather unusual tornado struck a farm in Southern California. About 6 small alligators about 1 foot in length fell from the sky that day. In 1894, a tornado traveled through England and dropped poisonous jellyfish on people. There's a version that tadpoles instead of jellyfish fell on the ground that day, but it still sounds quite strange. In Kentucky in 1876, there was a black humor rain. Doesn't sound funny to me. Pieces of meat fell from the sky. The locals tasted them and said it was like mutton or venison. However, later, birds discovered that a flock of buzzards had flown over that area. The birds felt unwell and regurgitated their lunch right in the air. And then, I assume, so did the locals who tried it. In 1947, fish fell from the sky in Marksville, Louisiana. In 2005, there was a rain that contained thousands of frogs in Serbia. In 2010, a small town in Australia was hit by a rain of perches, fish. And now, imagine that all these strange phenomena were caused by one villainous corporation where evil geniuses work. And one of them is you. So, you decide to make the most incredible natural cataclysm in history, a tornado of sharks, or Sharknado. It seems like it's impossible, but you're going to try, because you have nothing better to do. So first, we need to understand what a waterspout is. It's a column of rotating air filled with clouds. This vortex occurs during a thunderstorm when warm air releases a large amount of heat. This heat becomes the energy that moves the rising air currents. This warm, moist air goes up, and cold, dry air descends. The difference in temperatures preserves instability and helps tornadoes develop. When it forms over the water, a tornado becomes a waterspout. It can draw in particles of seawater, some objects, and even fish. But everything depends on the strength of this vortex. You've probably seen it when tornadoes lifted cars into the air or tore the roofs off of buildings. There's a video on the internet where a tornado raises cows into the air, and an ordinary cow weighs about 1,400 pounds. Ooh. Now, in comparison, the great white shark is about 4,400 pounds. If a tornado could lift several cows, it could cope with a shark. But besides the great white one, there are tiger sharks, bull sharks, and hammerhead sharks. All of them weigh less. Therefore, there's no doubt that a tornado could possibly lift them into the air too. Okay, now we can assume it's in the realm of possibilities. The next step is to create a real tornado. To do this, you need to heat the air and then make it rotate. The cold air will start to go down and you will get a whirlwind. One engineer from Canada named Lewis built devices that created tornadoes. He made several prototypes before assembling a real vortex engine. According to him, anyone can do it. However, these vortices were small. His device created thin jets of air that swirled and produced mini tornadoes, which then quickly dissipated due to strong winds. Lewis started developing this idea to get a new source of electricity, but he needed to create a giant vortex that would go into the sky to power several houses. He didn't have enough finances and opportunities to do this, but the place where you work has enough money to do it. You take the concept of the vortex engine and invest several $1 million. You build several large turbines that direct air to one point and then heat it with the help of a powerful generator. To give your tornado more destructive power, you electrify the atmosphere. You can control the tornado and change its direction using a special control panel. You little evil mad scientist, you. So you come to the coast of Australia, where there are many sharks of different species. To force them to gather in one place, you must throw several tons of minced meat into the water near the shore. Let me suggest that you don't do this by hand. The sharks immediately come there as soon as they smell the food. But there's a problem. These animals feel changes in the weather and don't approach the center of the storm. Therefore, to make sharks take risks, you need to make them angry and hungry enough. You go, Dr. Doofenshmirtz. You spend millions of dollars to organize large-scale fishing. You throw huge nets into the water, and within a week, catch all the fish, shellfish, and other marine life that can become dinner for sharks. You move all the prey into giant aquariums and wait for the sharks to get hungry. A few days later, you notice many big fish congregating near the shore, looking for food. Then, you buy a couple of tons of ground beef from several butcher shops. You put it in a large container and lift it with the help of a helicopter. You dump the meat in a place where you see a lot of sharks. Lunch attracts fish within a 1-mile radius. At this moment, a large ship with the tornado generator approaches the shore. Hey, can't quit now, right? You start the engines and strong flows of warm air accumulate in the sky. Electricity flashes and condensation creates rain. A powerful vortex begins to form in the sky. You control it and direct it towards the sharks. The whirlwind pulls pieces of ground beef from the water. The dust particles mix with the meat and the tornado turns red. Oh, I think I'm gonna barf. You increase the strength of the wind and see how the sharks begin to rise into the air. More precisely, they jump out of the water to grab the meat and the tornado picks them up. When several sharks are inside the vortex, you direct them toward the shore. People are running in horror. Some sharks fall back into the water and some fall to the beach. The hammerhead shark falls right into the kitchen of a coastal restaurant and eats the whole menu. The shark is also a pig. You direct the sharknado into the city. The storm lifts trees and cars into the air and rips off the roofs of houses. Some sharks fall down to the streets. People are running in different directions. The shark vortex passes through the city, scattering sharks. Of course, sharks don't crawl on the ground and don't try to eat people. They're just in shock and don't understand what's going on. Hey, what can I say? It's a PG Sharknado. Even in the ocean, sharks don't like to bite people. All attacks occur because sharks mistake them for seals or other sea creatures, which all look like food. Also, toothy fish can swim up to people out of curiosity. And now they're disoriented and having big breathing problems. Fish need a constant flow of water passing through their oxygen-extracting gills. Depending on the species, sharks can last without water for several minutes to an hour. At this moment, you realize that you have carried out not a villainous plan, but a stupid thing that has caused so many fish to suffer. Now, you need to fix everything. You have several helicopters that can transport the fish back into the ocean, but they're twitching and snapping their jaws in fear. Therefore, to calm them down, you use darts with sedatives. Then you help rescuers to fasten the sharks to the helicopters and lift them into the air. You have to get one fish out of an apartment on the 7th floor. Another shark was lying in the park. A hammerhead caused a big traffic jam on the road, and this tiger shark fell on a fire truck. Fortunately, they all have tough skin and strong muscles that protect them from damage. You pick up all the sharks and move them back to the ocean. No one and nothing has been hurt except for one thing: your reputation. You have failed your villainous plan and need to develop something new. This time, you'll create something that will really terrify people. You will invent a YouTube channel with nothing but ads. Alternate ending. You will invent a mega flood of spiders. Ew. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Imagine a world where instead of water, the oceans are made of methane. Yeah, that's right. Instead of swimming in H2O, you'd be paddling around in CH4. It's like Mother Nature's version of a fizzy drink. Such oceans actually exist on one of Saturn's moons called Titan. In fact, the methane and ethane on Titan play a similar role to the water on Earth. They cycle through the atmosphere and form clouds that eventually rain down onto the surface. They were discovered by the Cassini-Huygens space probe, and apparently, our entire planet's oil reserves could fit in one of Titan's puddles. Even the desert sand dunes on Titan have more organics than all of Earth's coal reserves. Who knew that Titan was the place to go if you're ever in need of fuel for your car? Now, obviously, there are some things that distinguish methane lakes from our water ones. First, the temperature on Titan is around -290 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like taking a dip in a giant glass of liquid nitrogen. Not exactly ideal for a beach day, is it? Methane is also less dense than water, so if you were to go swimming in such an ocean, you'd float like a balloon. On the bright side, it would make doing the backstroke a lot easier. Next, while water waves can be pretty majestic, unfortunately, we can't ride any on Titan. Cassini didn't detect any big waves there. Maybe it's due to low seasonal winds, or the fact that some of the lakes are much smaller than Earth's lakes, but we don't know for sure. Also, I know what you're thinking. If the oceans are made of methane, could you set them on fire? Technically, yes. Methane is a highly flammable gas, so if you were to light a match in a methane ocean, you'd get a pretty impressive, but dangerous, blaze. So, given all these differences, the question arises, what would a planet with such oceans look like? Well, we can make some guesses by looking at Titan. First of all, its atmosphere, composed primarily of methane, would be incredibly thick. Titan's atmosphere reaches nearly 370 miles into space, and the atmospheric pressure there is 60% greater than Earth's. So, if you ever wanted to experience the feeling of swimming super deep in the ocean, now's your chance. Also, Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas that traps the sun's heat really well. That's why our planet would warm up faster than a sauna. You may ask, why is it so cold on Titan then? This is because this moon is very far from the sun, and light doesn't reach it well. But if we place our planet somewhere in the middle, then the temperature may even be quite comfortable. Actually, methane oceans on a planet could really spice up the climate. The planet would be a breeding ground for methane clouds. Just like on Titan, it could form an orange-colored haze, or smog, that would make our planet look like a real mystery. It would be difficult to see us from space without some special telescopes. And let's not forget about methane storms. They would also occasionally drench the surface, so remember to bring your umbrella. But hey, at least the heavy carbon-rich compounds would make for some pretty sweet dune fields. And finally, the most important difference. While water oceans on Earth are teeming with all sorts of creatures, we're not sure if there's any life in methane oceans on Titan. If there is, they'd have to be pretty tough to survive in such extreme conditions. So, if life on such a planet exists, it would be very different from what we're used to seeing on Earth. For example, microbes might be able to handle it. These tiny resilient creatures can survive in a wide range of environments, including extreme ones. So it's possible that microbial life could exist in methane oceans. And what about us and animals? Well, scientist Robert Zubrin thinks that Titan might be the perfect place for humans to colonize in our solar system. According to him, this little moon has everything we need to survive and thrive. And if it's possible on that moon, then it could work with a planet too. For starters, we'd need some oxygen to breathe. We could use nitrogen and methane in the atmosphere to create breathable air and rocket fuel. We could also use these elements to make some fertilizers and grow plants. Next up, we'd need water. Since the oceans are made of methane, we can't exactly drink them. We'd need to find or create sources of water. Scientists believe that it actually may be hidden below the surface on Titan, together with some ammonia. We could use it to drink, or create even more oxygen. So, with all of these resources, we could create a self-sustaining colony even in a place with methane oceans. Piece of cake! Although, there are always alternatives. Maybe we could become methane breathers, evolve into organisms that use methane instead of oxygen. For example, we could get some large lungs because we'd have to inhale a much larger volume of air, since methane is less dense than oxygen. But this is pure sci-fi. Methane oceans are not the only unusual oceans in space. It turns out that seas on diamond planets may be even weirder. Take WASP 12b, for example. This exoplanet, located about 1,200 light-years away, might have oceans of tar. That's right, tar. The planet has more carbon than oxygen, which means its crust is probably made of things like diamond and graphite, instead of your average silica-based minerals like granite. Imagine stepping on this planet, and the first thing you notice is that the beaches are made up of black goo. It's like stepping into a nightmare, where you're trapped in quicksand made of sticky sludge. So forget about the sandy beaches and crystal clear water you're used to. Here, you'll be living the pitch life. Your swimwear will be replaced with hazmat suits, and you'll need a sturdy pair of boots to walk on the sticky surface. But in reality, WASP 12b is not the place to look for geology of any kind. It's simply too hot for anything to survive, let alone thrive. But there might be smaller, similar exoplanets where we could potentially live. Now, you might be thinking, tar oceans? That's crazy talk. But did you know that there's a 246-foot deep lake of natural asphalt here on Earth? It's called Pitch Lake, and it's located in Trinidad. It's formed when oil is forced to the surface, and the lighter components evaporate, leaving the thicker, heavier pitch behind. And guess what? This lake is home to a thriving ecosystem of microbes. So if you want to live on such a planet, at least you won't be alone. You'll have plenty of company in bacteria, fungi that love to feast on carbon found in asphalt, and archaea that live on methane. And finally, there are oceans of molten rock. That's right. Imagine a world where the floor is lava isn't just a game, but a reality. Welcome to 55 Cancri E, a planet so hot that the entire hemisphere facing its star is covered in magma. It's like a scene out of a heavy metal album cover. But don't worry, the other side of the planet is slightly cooler, so you can at least step off the lava and catch your breath. If you're feeling adventurous, you could always hop over to Koro T7b, another super Earth where the lava ocean is just as scorching. But this time, the night side doesn't offer much respite either. It's still seeing constant volcanic eruptions, like some sort of fireworks show. Scientists are scratching their heads trying to explain why these planets are so hot, and why they haven't cooled down yet. Maybe they're just really good at retaining heat, or maybe they just have a bad temperament. Either way, it's probably best to stick to playing the floor is lava on solid ground, and leave the real lava planets to someone else. All this diversity of oceans shows us that the universe is always full of surprises. It never ceases to amaze us with its creativity. Although these oceans are not suitable for human exploration yet, they challenge our understanding of what could exist beyond our world. So, let's continue to explore.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side. Now, let's pretend that humanity faces a huge threat from outer space. So we'll imagine that a giant planet-eating octopus comes to our solar system to eat Venus, Mars, Earth, Jupiter, and other planets, except Saturn. Therefore, people decide to move to the big planet with giant rings. Fortunately, they already have cool technologies that allow them to make such trips. So we get into giant ships, take off, and fly to Saturn. Life on the planet itself is impossible because it has no solid ground. The ship won't be able to land there. This is a giant gas ball that is 9 times wider than Earth. To compare their sizes, look at a 5-cent coin and a baseball. And the planet's atmosphere consists mainly of hydrogen and helium. So if the ship starts to land, it'll never reach solid ground. And the lower it goes, the higher the pressure it will experience. Eventually, the ship will just be crushed. Therefore, we have only one choice: the rings of Saturn. They're made up of giant, medium-sized, and tiny particles of ice and rock flying around the gas giant at tremendous speed. They were formed from comets flying by. Saturn's gravity knocked these celestial bodies off their course and crushed them with its pressure. Fragments of these comets began to accumulate around Saturn, forming rings. Now, some of these particles fly faster, some are slower. The closest to the planet is the D ring. It's followed by rings C and B. Then there's a large gap called Cassini division. Rings A, F, G, and E come after. This classification is very convenient for creating a ring map. So people approach the rings, but don't dare to land on them. First, they send test capsules with robots to scout the area. The robots choose a suitable location on the E ring. In fact, the distance between the rocks is quite large, and the ship can easily fly there. There are tiny particles, huge rocks the size of houses, and comets the size of a whole mountain. The first robot flies up to a large rock at high speed. At this moment, a baseball-sized stone pierces the robot's body. Another robot gets smashed between 2 colliding boulders. The third robot gets caught in a rain of sharp icicles and breaks. People have big engineering workshops on their ships, so they build new capsules and new robots. This time they're made of more durable materials, so the robots reach a big rock again. A few particles crash into them, but don't break through the armor. The machine set up a small station on a flying rock where people can live. But after a couple of hours, a big chunk of asteroids smashes the station. Well, Seems like we need another strategy. Giant ships scan the entire area of the E-ring and calculate the trajectories of billions of stones. After lengthy calculations, people finally find the perfect places in the middle of this chaos that will stay intact for a long time. They land on these large rocks in their capsules and begin to settle down. They build stations and small houses and install powerful batteries on them. Saturn is located at a distance of 9.5 astronomical units from the Sun. 1 unit is the distance from the Sun to Earth. So, Saturn is a pretty cold place. That's why there's so much ice flying around it. But how to get the energy to heat it all up? There's too little of it on large ships. Besides, solar panels are ineffective here because of the great distance from the Sun. Therefore, scientists create a way to generate kinetic energy from flying stones. It's like a windmill. When the wind drives the fans, these movements are converted into energy. So engineers build panels that collect power from the moving stones. But it doesn't slow the speed of rocks down because Saturn's gravity continues to move them. Thus, people receive a source of almost limitless energy. Some space stations have plants and trees that produce oxygen through photosynthesis. Only instead of sunlight, they get energy from ultraviolet. Then, people fill large tanks with oxygen and carry them to their homes. People begin to occupy the adjacent rings. You don't need a lot of fuel to get from one place to another. You can land on a rock, calculate its route, and wait for it to bring you to the needed point. Then you can move to another one, and so on, until you reach your destination. More and more people leave their ships and move to the rings. It seems that life is getting better, but then psychological problems begin. Constant movement in the vacuum of space drives everyone mad. Imagine living on a carousel that never stops. You can't walk to the store whenever you want because it always flies away. No one can go out for a walk, even in a spacesuit, because there's a chance to come across a rock flying at high speed. You can't plan anything because, at the moment, your plans can be ruined by a giant piece of ice. Computers don't help either. They can't calculate the trajectories of all space bodies. Rocks tend to break and split into hundreds of smaller ones. Also, new comets fly by and also become part of the rings. All this creates uncertainty and causes a sense of anxiety in people. Besides, it's dark, cold, and very lonely on the rings. Now think about building a base on a space object, but your best friend lands on another one a few miles away. Then, a giant icicle crashes into his rock and increases its speed. And a few days later, your friend is too far away. And it happens all the time. The only way to change your life is to settle on one of Saturn's moons. The planet has 83 of them. People have already confirmed and named 63, and the existence of 20 others has yet to be confirmed. They're all like different worlds. Some of them may be habitable, and the best candidate among them is Titan. There may be water on it, and its atmospheric pressure is only 1.5 times greater than Earth's. Its atmosphere consists of nitrogen and a little methane, forming carbon smog in Titan's upper layers. For this reason, we can't study this moon from Earth. But the coolest thing is that Titan flies outside the rings of Saturn. This means people can lead a quiet life there. There's also satellite Phoebe, covered with craters like our moon. This giant celestial body looks more like a gigantic meteorite. People have a lot of choices of where to start a new life. During a couple of hundred years spent on satellites. But why did they try to live on the rings? Why didn't they land on one of the moons from the very beginning? Because, well, then this video would be less fun and a whole lot shorter. But what if we were initially born inside the rings of Saturn? Let's say a massive meteorite with frozen water got caught by the planet's gravity. There were the simplest life forms inside the ice, and then this life began to acquire more developed forms. Imagine that the large rock managed to remain untouched for hundreds of millions of years, and during this time, humans appeared. But of course, they would be very different there. Firstly, they wouldn't experience gravitational forces. This would make them taller, but weaker. People's skin would be pale because of the lack of light, but very hardy thanks to cold temperatures. Particles of ice and grains of sand flying in space would roughen people's skin. In such biological armor, without gravity, they would jump from one rock to another in search of food and water. And, by the way, that would be the main problem. How would people survive without oxygen in the vacuum of space? Where would they get their food? Saturn's rings are a pretty lifeless and dangerous place. If there are not even the simplest forms of life there, then how could such a complex one as the human appear? Therefore, even in theory, the appearance of people would be impossible there. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side. Consider the rogue planet, the cosmic wanderer that nobody wants to take home. Basically, a rogue planet is a planet that has been ejected from its own star system and is now floating aimlessly through space like a cosmic loner. These planets aren't just a theory. Scientists have actually detected some in our galaxy. In fact, estimates suggest that there may be lots of these cosmic nomads floating around the Milky Way. And they aren't just small rocky worlds like Earth. Some of them are actually massive gas giants, many times larger than Jupiter. These behemoths could potentially have their own moons, and even their own mini-systems orbiting around them. For example, one of the most famous rogue planets we know of has a complicated name. Here, you read it for yourself. It's located about 80 light-years away from Earth, and it was discovered in 2013. This rogue planet is estimated to be around 6 times the mass of Jupiter, and is believed to be around 12 million years old. And yes, just because these cosmic loners don't have a star, it doesn't mean they're super cold. They can still generate heat and light from their own internal processes. Some may even have magnetic fields and auroras, just like Earth. In other words, rogue planets could potentially be habitable if they have the right conditions. So, what would life on such a planet look like? And could we potentially live in such a world? Well, living on a rogue planet can be a lonely existence. They have no warm sun to bask in, no cozy atmosphere to cuddle up in, and no cosmic neighbors to have barbecue with. That's why we'd have to get creative. Let's start with the most obvious problem. We'd have a hard time without light and heat. So, how do we fix this? Well, we'd probably have to invest in some really fancy space heaters and wear fashionable super-warm spacesuits. Or we could invent a whole new way to generate electricity without relying on solar power. For example, how about using geothermal energy? Now that's hot stuff. Each planet has an internal source of heat. Without it, they would all be nothing more than cold, lifeless rocks floating through space. This internal heat can be harnessed and used to power everything, from homes to factories to spaceships. It's like having a hot tub big enough to power an entire city. And that city, most likely, will be located underground, closer to the heat source. And as for light, well, we'd probably have to build some really bright flashlights. Or maybe even learn to genetically engineer some bioluminescent organisms to light up our homes. Just imagine, space is overgrown with neon mushrooms and plants. By the way, speaking of plants, plant life would be pretty hard to come by without a star. So, what would we eat? Well, we could use the same geothermal vents that we talked about, or some chemical reactions to sustain ourselves. And hey, maybe we'd develop a taste for sulfur-rich foods, or we'd start fermenting our own drinks from the bubbling volcanic mud. Yum! But besides food, we'd have a more important problem. Living on a rogue planet would be breathtaking, literally. We'd have no air. You see, not all rogue planets have good, stable atmospheres. It all depends on their size, composition, and other things. But even if our new home does have an atmosphere, it may be incredibly thin and unstable. We'd have no pretty blue skies or dramatic sunsets to admire. Instead, we'd be staring out into the infinite void of space, where the stars would be brighter than ever before. And forget about weather patterns. Without an atmosphere to create them, we'd have no rain, no snow, and no thunderstorms. And that's just some minor problems. What's worse, the temperature on the planet would be wildly fluctuating. swinging from unbearable heat to unbearable cold. It would be like living in an oven that's always being turned on and off. And finally, we'd be exposed to all kinds of space debris and cosmic radiation. So, if you don't want to get crispy, you might want to invest in some serious SPF. So, how do we fix it? Well, we'd have to find a way to generate our own oxygen and probably create something like a space-age biosphere. For example, we could grow some plants that could produce oxygen, or we'd learn to filter the air like a high-tech air purifier. Finally, we have the last most important problem, finding water. And here's where the underwater oceans come to our aid. Now we're really diving deep into the possibilities. Nyuk nyuk. But seriously, scientists suggest that some of these planets may indeed have underwater oceans. It would be like living on a giant water balloon that's been buried underground, with the ground beneath your feet made of ice and rock. In other words, we could just tap into these underground oceans. They could provide us with a source of water for drinking, farming, and manufacturing. Maybe even with some other resources and materials we've never seen before. And by the way, who knows what kind of strange creatures might be lurking in those underground seas? But don't worry, even if we don't have any underground oasis, there are also other options. We could get some water from comets, ice mining, and even from the atmosphere, the one we just created before. Finally, we need to find and mine some resources to build our homes and other stuff. And a rogue planet might not have the same kinds of resources as a planet that orbits a star. It's like trying to find some treasures in a desert, not exactly a sure thing. We may have to rely on resources from nearby asteroids and things like that. And if we want to extract resources from the planet itself, we might need to drill down through miles of ice and rock. But hey, if you're up for the challenge, there'll always be a chance you'll strike it rich on a rogue planet. And who knows, maybe you'll discover some new resources that are even more valuable than gold or diamonds. Great! Looks like we've solved the most important problems. Now, there may be other small difficulties. For example, we'd also have to deal with some seriously long days and nights, depending on how fast our planet was rotating. And we wouldn't have a normal, regular day-night cycle. The rotation of our planet could be wildly unpredictable. Maybe we'd have weeks-long nights, followed by weeks-long days, which could really mess with our sleep schedules. We might have to develop some really strong coffee to keep us going through those long, dark nights. But, hypothetically, we can adapt to all these things and overcome all the challenges. And now, finally, welcome to the rogue planet, where the sun never rises, but the adventures never end. Thanks to our advanced technology, we've managed to create a comfortable and habitable environment in this once barren world. The sky above us is now a beautiful shade of blue, filled with fluffy white clouds and the occasional flock of flying creatures. Don't ask. As we venture out from our underground habitats, we're greeted by a world that's full of surprises. Strange plants and animals have adapted to the unique conditions of this planet, some with bioluminescent features that glow in the dark. And be careful if you want to go swimming in the underground ocean. They might be home to some bizarre creatures who want to feast on… well, we'll come back to that. Maybe. As you can see, we've created sprawling cities and thriving communities, powered by the planet's geothermal energy. We also created a bunch of artificial light sources that keep things bright throughout the dark, chilly nights. Of course, we still have some problems with navigation and timekeeping, but things aren't as dull as they used to be, are they? Overall, living on a rogue planet would definitely have its challenges, but it could also be a pretty exciting way to experience the universe. And who knows? Maybe someday we'll find such a planet and actually turn it into a bustling intergalactic metropolis someday. But until then, let's enjoy and tidy up our dear Earth. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like if every planet in our solar system was the size of Earth? Well, it's time to dive into this mind-boggling scenario. Let's imagine what each planet would look like if they were as big as our beloved blue planet. Would the barren red landscape of Mars suddenly become a lush green oasis? Would the massive swirling gas giant Jupiter just disappear? And how would it affect our solar system as a whole? Are we all doomed? Buckle up and let's find out. The first planet on our list is Mercury, the smallest planet in our solar system. But now, forget about the moon-like Mercury. Instead, picture yourself on the surface of a super dynamic incandescent inferno. There are a lot of craters and active volcanoes around you, and right in front of you is a huge, blinding bright sun. What a nightmare! But let's break these changes down. Well, along with the size of Mercury, both its mass and gravity would increase. In that case, it's possible that Mercury would have more atmosphere. Temperatures on Mercury are extreme, not only because it's very close to the sun, but also because of its very thin atmosphere. So during the day, the temperatures there reach 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and at night, it becomes terrifyingly cold, down to negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit. But now, when the gravity is stronger, Mercury could have a denser atmosphere, so the heat would be better distributed across the planet. And the atmosphere isn't the only thing that could make it hotter. If Mercury became bigger, it would likely experience increased internal heating due to gravitational compression. And hypothetically, its tectonic activity could increase. In other words, more interesting landscape, more mountains, and more scary active volcanoes. Congratulations, you've turned Mercury into Venus 2.0. For us, all these changes wouldn't be very pleasant. Now it would become much harder to send our spacecraft there, so it's better for Mercury to stay as it is, small, calm, and boring. Basically, the complete opposite of our next planet, Venus. So what would happen to Venus if it was Earth-sized? Actually, nothing. It wouldn't change at all because Venus is already almost the size of Earth. It's even called the Earth's twin, although twin is a big word, of course. In reality, we couldn't be more different. Venus is often called the morning star because it's so bright and visible in the sky. But don't let its beauty fool you. This planet is one of the most inhospitable places in our solar system. Its surface is hotter than a freshly baked pizza, around 900 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's covered in thick clouds of sulfuric acid that would dissolve any human who tried to visit. So, unfortunately, you won't be planning any trips there anytime soon. So let's move on to a planet that, unlike Venus, could potentially become a new home for us, Mars. Picture yourself standing on Mars's surface, watching the blue sunset and breathing in a refreshing breeze of air. Yes, you read that right, air. Moreover, you could be surrounded by plants, animals, and basically feel like you're on Earth. But how is that possible? Bigger Mars would have a stronger magnetic field and gravity. This would lead to a richer and denser atmosphere. It would likely have a wider range of gases, including oxygen. Wouldn't that be cool? Also, a denser atmosphere could distribute heat across the planet, so Mars would become much warmer and cozier. And here comes the most important change: liquid water. Mars actually has some frozen water at its poles and in subsurface reservoirs. But with a stronger gravitational pull, it could potentially stabilize liquid water on its surface. Hooray! However, it's not all fun and games. New Mars would also have a volcanic personality. It's already geologically active, but now its internal heat and pressure would skyrocket. That means more frequent and more crazy volcanic eruptions. Imagine how exciting it would be to witness such eruptions on another planet, if you manage to escape the consequences. In general, the planet could become greener and lusher, but not safer, although it would still be great to see it. But it's time to move on to the giants of our solar system. And if we're enlarging the planets before, now it's time to squeeze them really, really hard. If Jupiter became 11 times smaller, oh boy, what a disaster that would be. The first thing we'd notice is a change in gravity. And I say we'd notice because now we'd have no choice but to move somewhere. Jupiter experiences from 30 to 100 collisions with large asteroids per year. No big deal? all because of its strongest gravity, which attracts them all and protects us. But now our big protective brother has turned into a small baby. Say hi to a bunch of asteroids. Oh, and say bye-bye to Jupiter. This planet is known for its thick, swirling atmosphere. But with a weaker gravitational pull, Jupiter would probably have a hard time holding on to it. So over time, it would slowly escape into space, leaving behind a thin atmosphere composed mainly of nitrogen and oxygen. We'll also have to bid farewell to the iconic appearance of another giant, Saturn. The most noticeable difference would be the disappearance of a feature of Saturn. But with Earth's gravity, they would either fall onto the planet or scatter into space. Bummer. Saturn is also a gas giant, just like Jupiter. Its atmosphere is made up of mostly hydrogen and helium. But if it were Earth-sized, its gases would be compressed due to the increased gravity. This would make it much denser. That means Saturn's overall size and shape would change. Theoretically, if we squeeze Saturn hard, it could potentially become a brown dwarf. It's a type of failed star that lacks the mass to sustain nuclear fusion, but emits heat and light. So, Saturn could stop being a planet altogether. The weather on it would probably have changed too. All its crazy storms, such as the famous hexagonal storm at its North Pole, would have become weaker and calmer. The next giant is Uranus. Let's try to compress this poor fella. First off, the surface gravity on Uranus would be much weaker than it is now. Its atmosphere might also change. If Uranus was smaller, it could have a thinner atmosphere and different gases altogether. This planet is pretty chilly, with an average temperature of -353 degrees Fahrenheit. Ugh. But if it was the size of Earth, it might actually warm up a bit due to its reduced volume to surface area ratio. Don't get too excited though, it would still be way colder than the coldest spots on Earth. As you can see, gas giants don't easily go through all this shrinking, except perhaps one of them. Surprisingly, small Neptune would become much friendlier. For starters, it would probably be a rocky planet with a tiny atmosphere. That means no more gas giant, but instead, a planet that's easier for humans and critters alike to live and move around on. Speaking of movement, because of the smaller size, the gravity on this new Neptune would be almost the same as Earth's, making it a heck of a lot easier to walk and jump around. No more floating away into space. Now, the atmosphere of the original Neptune is so thick you could barely see your hand in front of your face. And the surface pressure is about 100 times that of Earth's atmosphere. But our new Neptune would be much different, with a much thinner and less dense atmosphere. It would still have some methane, water, and ammonia in it, but nowhere near as much as before. Finally, the temperature. The current Neptune is freezing, with an average temperature of about -370 degrees Fahrenheit. But if it was the same size as Earth, it would likely be much warmer, just like Uranus. Ah, that's more like it. What a planet that would be. That's it for the changes in the planets. But what would happen to the entire solar system if we made all the planets so small? It's hard to predict, but it's clear that their gravity and orbits could change a lot. It's unlikely that any of them would have flown into outer space, or crashed into each other, or something like that. But many of their orbits would probably become quite unstable, and the number of collisions with asteroids would have increased significantly. Of course, all this is purely speculation. It's not like we can actually test all this. But it's still a pretty interesting thought experiment, and it makes you appreciate just how unique and special our solar system really is.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side. If Einstein was born in the 1500s, his hair would definitely be slicker and probably parted in the middle. We'd seen him with a puffy chest and a neutral expression. And most importantly, he would wear these funny aristocratic shoes with delicate lace. Now here's a crazy thought. Let's say Beethoven was an adult in the early 2000s. I'm thinking he would look like a member of the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. Definitely no crazy hair, since he would be rocking a buzz cut. Honestly, I think I love this version of him. Now, if The Scream by Edward Munch was an early Renaissance painting, this is what we would see. A man in a laced-up long-sleeve vest with a pouch on his belt to carry water and essentials, of course. Picture an old Bilbo Baggins, if you will. And what if Selena Gomez had been born in the 1920s? Now I'm thinking she'd be pictured wearing a beautiful polka dot dress with a short hairdo and a cloche hat. Would Brad Pitt also be considered one of the most beautiful men alive back in ancient Egypt? I'd say absolutely. These pastel tunics are a great fit for him. Oh, and we saw him in Troy. He sure can sport sandals. Oh, and who's that? It's Spider-Man, but all the way back in the Victorian era. He still has his red mask, but even superheroes had to be formal. That's why he's wearing a vest with precious-looking gold buttons. And not to mention, this Spider-Man has a cape. Those long tailored capes men used to wear. And that's Doctor Strange. I have to say, he seems to fit perfectly into the Victorian period. He's a little bit fancier here. And it's embroidered with golden threads and some brooches. Jump to the future. AI generated what celebrities would look like in 40 years from now. So this is Harry Styles. I'd say a mixture of an aged Jim Carrey with Daniel Craig maybe. And what about Billie Eilish? With natural gray hair, she looks like Tilda Swinton in Narnia. Gorgeous, if you ask me. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Try to imagine what it would be like if you woke up one day and everything around you was pink. And I mean literally, not just having a think pink vibe. Everything from your walls to your bed, desk, armchair, and even the clothes you wear would be rosy. Would you be able to live in such a world for a whole week? Your first thought might be, is there something wrong with my eyes? For most people, the answer is no. Even if there was something wrong with your vision, the chances are you wouldn't end up seeing just one single color for the rest of your life. Most people who are colorblind are born that way, even though there are rare cases in which you can develop this condition later in life. And even those people who are totally colorblind see the world only in black, white, and gray. Most people with color blindness have problems perceiving certain colors. Their greatest difficulty is distinguishing the shades of the same color. But let's get back to our pink world, shall we? Is pink a special color for our brain? When you think about pink objects, you most likely associate them with emotions like love and kindness. In some cases, looking at the color pink for longer periods of time can actually make people feel more agitated. In sports, teams have been known to paint the opposing team's locker room pink in an attempt to decrease their energy and performance. This tactic was implemented by an American coach who believed the all-pink room would mess with the minds of the opposing teams. What if I told you that this specific shade of pink you woke up to had special powers though? In the 1970s, a scientist named Alexander Schaus found a color that made people feel calm and relaxed. After lots of experiments to test the effects of different colors on people's behavior, he found this specific color which he named the Schaus pink. His study showed that when people looked at a bright color, they lost strength in their muscles. But when they looked at the color blue, their strength returned to normal. The researcher talked about this in public lectures and even showed it on TV. He invited a bodybuilder and concluded that they could not do a single bicep curl after staring at the pink color. Schaus was so sure of his discovery that he even suggested that prisons should paint holding cells pink to calm people down. 2 officers at a U.S. prison tested this idea by painting one holding cell pink and found that some inmates became calmer after being in the pink cell for 15 minutes. In any case, Schaus's original research hasn't been proven to be true by the following studies, but that doesn't mean you can't test it out for yourself. There's no way to tell how your brain might react to living in a pink world for a day, a week, or even a whole month. It all has to do with your previous experience with this color. If it was a happy one, you might actually like living in a pink environment. However, it may be hard on your eyes after a certain point. But we can't say that the colors we surround ourselves with don't affect us. Carl Jung, a famous Swiss psychoanalyst, developed a theory of color psychology, also known as Jungian color theory. He believed that each color meant something different somewhere in the back of our mind and had the power to reveal deeper thoughts. He thought that colors could be used to understand an individual's innermost thoughts and feelings. For example, he considered the color blue to be formal and precise, while green made people feel relaxed and patient. While looking at the color yellow, people became more sociable. And if you liked the color red, it meant you were competitive and strong-willed. Pink isn't the only color people have studied to see its effects on the brain. Let's take green for instance. Would you feel better living in a green world? Well, looking at this color can actually help you focus better. Studies have shown that people who take short breaks to look at pictures of green things, like trees or grass, concentrate better on boring tasks and make fewer mistakes. This is because green is a soothing color that is easy for our eyes and brain to see. I mean, it's the color we often find in nature, so it's no wonder most of us find it soothing. When it comes to red and orange, we should use these in moderation. So, no orange houses for me, thank you. These colors can make you feel more energized and active, but too much can be bad. Researchers concluded that being surrounded by red or orange for long periods of time can make us fussy. Let's not forget about blue. It can make you feel calm and rested. But it can also make you feel gloomy, especially those darker shades. Waking up in a blue world might come with its own set of problems, depending on the shade. Then, there's the problem with blue light. It's the type of light screens emit. At times, it can be bad for your sleep because such a light can trick your brain into thinking it's still daylight. It can make it hard for your body to produce the hormones you need to fall asleep at the right hours. To avoid these issues, it's a good idea to avoid blue light screens for at least an hour before bed. How about our eyes? Is staring at the same color for longer periods of time any good for us? Not really. If you look at one color for a long time, for starters, it can change the way you see other colors. Back in the day, people used old computer screens that featured a lot of green hues. Because they were exposed to this color a lot during a normal working day, they would see everything with a purple tint for a while after they stopped using the computer. The explanation is simple. The part of the eye that was responsible for seeing green got tired. It got compensated by other parts of the eye that were more rested, those responsible for the red and blue hues. What do you get when you combine red with blue? That's right, purple. These days, most people use computer screens that are white with black letters, so this problem doesn't happen as much. This change in our eyesight is also explained by the McCullough effect. It's a phenomenon that happens when people perceive a change in color of an object after it has been looked at for a long period of time. In 1965, Celeste McCullough found out that if you looked at colorful stripes for too long, it could affect how you saw things for months. Her experiment had people looking at colorful stripes, then at black and white ones. If you do this for long enough, you'll end up seeing the monochrome lines in color too. Just like how a camera flash can make your vision go blurry for a bit, this effect can last for a long time if you look at the stripes for too long. Does the color you stare at make any difference to your eyesight? Well, not really. There is no evidence to suggest that a certain color can trigger the McCullough effect. It's rather caused by a combination of factors, like changes in the way the brain processes visual information, fatigue of the eye muscles, and changes in the way the eye's retina responds to light. What about light? Exposure to some sunlight is important for our well-being, but you've surely heard this one since you were little. Don't stare directly at the sun. Is there really any evidence that it affects our eyes, or is it just another myth? Turns out, it is indeed dangerous. When you stare at the sun for an extended period, ultraviolet light enters your eyes. It then gets through the internal lens onto the retina and reaches the back of the eye. When this light-sensitive tissue is exposed to UV rays, it can get damaged. You'll end up seeing spots for longer than just a few seconds, or even have permanent eyesight damage. This process can happen quickly, even in just a few seconds of direct sun gazing.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Imagine you wake up one day to a world with no electricity, no internet, no money, no work or school. Nothing that you're used to. No, you're not in California when they shut the power off. You're not even in your own home, because you've been magically transported to the Stone Age. What could possibly happen next? Of course, your first reaction would be shock, but let's move past that. You've now accepted that you get to experience life Flintstone style. First, let's look around. This is your cave, where you live with your family. You have your own sleeping area that's covered in animal skin. However, you might also live in a primitive hut supported by mammoth tusks and ribs, with an animal skin over it as protection from the rain. Your morning routine won't include a quick trip to the bathroom or to brush your teeth or a hot cup of coffee. And if you're wondering where the Stone Age people did their business, well, it was basically anywhere outdoors. How convenient. Just pick a bush and go. All right, it's time to get out and explore the New World. But hey, don't forget to put on your clothes. No, nothing comfy and trendy from the mall. Back in the day, humans used the skins of the animals they hunted to create simple, rough loincloths. To make these hides more flexible, they had to chew them. Let's assume you already have an outfit for today and don't have to strain your jaws right now. Thousands of years in the future, humans will learn how to smoke these animal hides to make them last longer and start making tunics. What about footwear? Scientists believe it was present around 40,000 years ago. Take a small piece of animal skin and wrap it around your foot. Then stuff hay under the heel to create some kind of sole. Voila! One shoe is done. Do the same with the other foot, and you're ready to roam. Now, don't be scared. You're not going to face a giant mammoth right outside the shelter. Ancient humans were pretty smart and learned animals' habits because it was the only way to survive in the wild. So they chose caves or built huts in the safest places they could find. Now go down to the river and wash your face. Are you curious to find out what you'd look like in the Stone Age? Take a peek at your reflection in the water. See, you're not that much different from the modern you. Just that your hair is a mess and you might be a few inches shorter, with a more developed jaw because of the harsh diet. And look at those bulky muscles. Well, that's what you get when your life is all about running and fighting with wild animals while hunting. Yes, hunting is on your to-do list today. But first, it's time for breakfast. Luckily, you have some leftovers from dinner. Eggs, wild fruits, and berries. Sorry, no gas stove to cook the eggs. Why not try to do it over the fire? Here's a free tip. Find 2 small but sturdy and dry wooden sticks. Place some dry leaves or a chunk of your own hair at the base for kindling and rub the sticks vigorously against each other. Keep going. Be patient. Okay, finally there's an ember. Good job. Now you can cook your breakfast using a flat stone as a frying pan. Need a fork? Sorry, that won't be invented for thousands of years. See that seashell attached to a wooden stick? That is your spoon. Come on, the jungle is waiting for you. Thankfully, the Ice Age is long gone, so the weather is warm and lush greenery is in abundance. That's good for you since you have to pick different edible plants, nuts, fruits, and wild grains. It wasn't until around 10,000 BCE that folks in the Stone Age learned how to grow their crops and domesticate animals. Only then could they finally stop moving from place to place in search of good hunting grounds. Oh look, there's some grapes. Let's snatch them. But how do we gather grains, you might be wondering? Well, allow me to introduce you to some Stone Age tools. By the way, the Stone Age is named after the tools that humans invented that were made out of wood? No, obviously, stone. Let me help you out again. Here's a U-shaped stone sickle that knocks down the grain stalks. It's time to bring everything you've collected to your camp. Now that the shock of time traveling is worn off, you notice that there are a few other huts near your dwelling. Those are your neighbors. Betty and Barney Rubble, I guess. Stone Age people usually united in groups of 20 to 50 and help each other to survive. Okay, you can eat grapes and other fruits raw, but what can you do with raw grain? To separate the grains from the husks, take a stone bowl and a small grinding stone and grind the grains. Now, if you mix smashed grains with water, you'll get gruel. Fry it on stones the way you did with the eggs, and there's your first flatbread. Yeah, it doesn't taste amazing, but don't forget, it's going to be another 15,000 years before your favorite bakery gets built. Is it dusk already? Brace yourself, my friend, because you are about to go hunting. But I've got good news for you. You don't have to do it alone. Stone Age people survived this period because they did almost everything together. So, call up your camp neighbors and get ready. How would you feel living in such harsh conditions? Let me know in the comments. But how did humans communicate back then? At the very beginning of the Stone Age, they only used a series of cries and gestures to express their fear, joy, pain, or warning to the others about imminent danger. It was much later that they learned how to pronounce specific sounds using their teeth, tongue, and mouth. That's how both speech and language was developed, which made their life much easier and leveled up their teamwork. Of course, anthropologists have no clue how exactly their language sounded, since obviously no written traces are left, and nobody left any tapes either. Oh, what's a tape? Ancient technology, don't worry about it. So, you and your camp fellows need to take some special hunting tools with you. What are they? The first and most primitive things used for taking animals down were long, sharpened wooden sticks, and sometimes just a big rock. But over time, sharpened sticks turned into sophisticated spears. The points weren't made of metal yet, of course. It's too early for that. Instead, they used small, sharp-edged stones attached to a long bone or stick. This was a very important invention since it made hunting less dangerous. Their chances of staying alive were better because they didn't have to get as close to an animal and could hunt it from a distance. As dusk settles, your hunting group goes deep into the jungle. You should be looking for large herbivore animals like elephants, woolly mammoths, giant bison, deer, and reindeer. They won't be only your dinner, but will also give you a supply of furs, bones, horns, and hides that you can use for your household. There were two main hunting techniques back then. The first was rather time-consuming but safe. It included digging a huge hole around the place where animals went to drink water. That hole served as the trap for your game. But you're gonna have to dig it out without a spade or shovel. You'll need the help of a digging stick, a wooden stick with a horn at the top, or a large cleaver, an oblong-shaped stone or bone. After the hole is ready, you'd have to hide nearby and wait patiently for an animal to fall in. The other technique required the whole hunting party chasing the animal down and forcing it into mud and water channels where they get stuck and have no way to get out. Did you see that? It's a deer. Run! Run as fast as you can and try to corner it straight into the swamp. Oh no, got away. Yeah, not every hunting session is going to be a success. In fact, most won't. But your tribe still needs something for dinner. Better move on to fishing then. Don't worry, you won't have to catch fish with your bare hands. Fishing nets and harpoons are at your disposal. Nets were made from tree bark and grass. The oldest one, found by archaeologists, dates back to 8,300 BCE. Harpoons made of antlers usually had a rope to pull the catch back up to shore. It was used mostly for big targets like whales, tuna, and swordfish. Okay, once you've asked around where a good spot would be, throw the net in the river. Now you have to wait. Oh look, there's some fish. Pull the net with all your might. Come on, tribe, help him out. I mean, don't look at me, I'm just narrating here. All right, good catch, and not a moment too soon. You've just made sure you won't go hungry tonight. Bring what you caught into the camp and get some rest. The others will take care of the catch. Now I know what you're thinking. It's all work and no play. And yeah, life in the Stone Age was anything but easy. But still, humans did have some forms of entertainment. No, you're not going to an amusement park or a cinema, but you can pass the time playing music on flutes, made from bird bones and mammoth ivory. You can also take up a hobby like crafting, making necklaces and bracelets from tusks, bones, and shells. Or you can get full-on artsy and draw patterns on your body using a paint made from ochre. It's a type of red clay. Or paint some pictures in a cave. Carve something crazy to make archaeologists in the future wonder what it meant. Can you smell that? It's dinner time. Go on, enjoy it. You deserved it. Doesn't it taste so much better since you worked so hard for it? All right, now that you've experienced a day in the Stone Age, let's take you back home to the modern day. The next time you complain that your internet is too slow or the food you ordered is 15 minutes late, think about how much harder life used to be for people in the Stone Age, and how it is only thanks to their tireless efforts to survive that you and I get to enjoy our pretty comfortable lifestyle today.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and